Good evening, and it's just a little after 6:04 here down in the lower theater. We're at the Bellows Falls Village Trustee regular meeting. It's Tuesday, June 8th, 2021. And thank you for those who are attending by Zoom. I see there's a few. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We need to approve the minutes of Tuesday, May 11th and May 25th. Did we get those here? Just trying to remember. I don't see them. Did anybody? We don't have the minutes in our packet, Scott. So again, keeps happening. We'll have to push this off to the July meeting because they're not included. Okay. Additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and/or pressing matters that will require ratification at a future meeting. Do you have anything, Scott? Good. Okay. Public comment on items not on the agenda. There are people on Zoom. Anyone want to speak? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Yes, Gary, go ahead.
Yeah. So I just wanted to let folks know that the town is hosting, and Stephen Associates and Nobis Environmental is presenting on an island and under the hill districts area-wide plan. And what it is the Wyndham Regional Commission Brownfields program funded the town for a study of the area. That the purpose of the plan is that in the 3-month process, we'll come out with a roadmap for developing the underutilized properties in the island and under the hill. Under the hill is where TLR, Wyman Flint, Adams Gristmill are, with the end use for each property that has community support, that fits our land use and town plan principles, that includes infrastructure for pedestrian and vehicular accessibility, like bridges and sidewalks, as well as streetscapes and utilities, and that's economically feasible and provides recommended stakeholders, funding mechanisms, a timeline, sequence, and process for the cleanup and development or renovation. So that's the optimistic view. The plan will provide us with all of those by the end that over the next 10 years we can implement. And so it's at 6:30 p.m. on Thursday night. Fact TV will be hosting Zoom and recording it. So if you can't attend then, you can watch it later and send comments to an email address. And all that information is on the website at rockinghamvt.org. There's a Zoom link and agenda and materials. And thank you. Yes, and in person down here in the lower theater. For those who can make it, the consultants will be here with boards and presentations, et cetera.
I saw your flyer said Little Theater. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that one's been repaired. It says lower theater. Yeah.
Okay. I know, well, that's a new name.
Yeah, so on the website is the correct one.
Okay, so it's lower theater. Great. Awesome.
Gary, before you go,
Yep.
do you want to just talk a little bit? I know we're putting together a calendar for other summer events, and so some of those might impact some folks in the village. Just we talked about Old Home Days and a few others, but it might be an opportunity just to sort of let the board know what's coming.
Yeah, so we're working on a calendar that combines all of the events across organizations. So for instance, the Chamber has Old Home Days, Flannel Festival, Chowder Fest. BIFTA has the BF3F, the Light Up BF, and the Shop Local programs. The Historic Preservation Commission has events. The alumni, all the various parades, and it can be challenging to keep track of things, not double schedule things. So working with Scott to develop a format that can be on the website that anyone can look at, and it has everything on there. So for instance, if with this area-wide plan, we had scheduled this public meeting, and you had scheduled a public meeting on water and sewer upgrades at the same time, because we look at a calendar and they're in different places. So that will ideally by the end of the week will be on the website and complete.
I just wanted to insert there that the previous manager used to put out flyers, give us flyers We can put in business windows and stuff to help keep people on top of that. We also, remember, we used to do them for construction
Oh,
as well,
yes.
because there was a lot of construction projects going on in the area. But a calendar like that would be great to distribute more than just on the website, so people could have more access to it. Not everybody goes there every day, so
Great idea. Yeah, we'll have some printed versions as well.
thanks, Gary. Thank you. Managers report, please.
Thank you. We're having a couple of challenges at the moment. I've got a couple folks out on medical leave, so we're a little short in water and we're a little short in finance at the moment. So hopefully both of those folks are doing well and we'll be able to come back at some point. But in the moment, we're a little bit behind, so we are working on some things to finish up for our transition to year end and for taxes. I'd shared some information by email, just talking earlier with Deb and with Jigs, but just so that the board knows, we're working with NEMRIC to try to make sure that all of our financials will be completed so that when we do our close for year end, we'll have, we won't have as many of these open items that were part of the problem with our budget and our audit from last year. So we had NEMRIC in today. We have a work schedule, I think, that will be we'll able to accomplish all the things that we need to complete, and hopefully we'll also address all of the concerns that some members have raised, either individually or in emails or in the meetings, about specific items that they're not seeing in our balance sheet or in our current financials. So those are in process, and I feel pretty good that we'll be able to share those updates with you as we go through those. And then ultimately, when we do the year-end close, we'll be able to go through that and have that information as well, so that will be up to date for the June 30th close. Somewhat important because at the same time, the listers are also obviously doing tax grievances, and then they'll have to close out the grand list. And all that is important because that all applies to the ability to finalize the taxes and then ultimately put out tax bills in July. So there's quite a few things that sort of all fit together in the next 4 to 6 weeks. So we are working through some of those issues. I think we'll be on time and hopefully on target with all the things that we have discussed previously.
Jakes.
Just a question. I know NEMRIC obviously is the vendor of our accounting system, but do they have the accounting expertise? I know we've used a woman from NEMRIC in the past when we've had lapses in our finance director, but I haven't got the impression that we're dealing with accountants, and I just wanted to be sure that that is the case, that they're if they're the company to help us, that they've got the clout
Yes.
in the accounting area to get the job done.
Yeah, we're going to be leaning on people not just in the software area, but also we've also got some folks that need to work on some stuff with us in the utility billing as well as in the taxes. So we've got the right people, I think, in place. So we'll get the things done. And we're working also with the auditors to make sure that our year-end close and our reports are tied in and don't have issues like we had discussed previously, where we have large balances or we're carrying balances in places that we then have to go back and create journal entries and adjusting entries. So that process is getting cleaned up as well as we get to this year-end closeout. So it's a little labor intensive. It makes things a little chaotic, but I think ultimately it'll get done. It'll be done right, and we'll have a blueprint hopefully that will serve us well to go forward, so we don't have to repeat some of the scrambling that we're doing right now.
So we shouldn't have any concerns about running over budget in the finance department at this point, right? I mean,
I don't have any
they
concerns about
have
running.
charges, so.
No, I don't have any concerns about running over budget in general, but certainly not. No, we're fine with individual line items. But if we're looking at aggregates, I'm not worried at all. We're still okay. We still have some delayed payments that we've talked about. We still have some follow-up items on our debt service schedules that we talked about as well. those are going to get clarified and updated as well. So I just got finally got a notification from one of our USDA loans that there's a payment coming this week for $588,000. So that starts to chip into that balance that we talked about. So we're getting there. It's just, labor intensive and a little slower than we'd like. But there are, we do have a roadmap and we have a legitimate process in place, and I'll keep the board apprised as we go forward. So if you have any questions or concerns or specific items you want me to address, either let me know or email me. I'd be happy to make sure that we address those so that you're satisfied when we get to July 1.
No, I appreciate it. I feel bad that you're in that position, but it really is critical that we complete the year in an appropriate way. Very critical.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, nobody wants to, be concerned about where they are with the financial position of the village. Everybody wants to be confident that your numbers and your questions and my answers are all accurate. So
I'm assuming that some of this is also impacting the town
Yeah,
and
I
their
would think.
finances.
yes, it
'cause
does. Sure.
It's all the same pot, pretty much.
Well, particularly the allocation of some of the expenses.
Yep.
We've talked about it.
Yes.
But whether it's between the village and the town, or whether it's accounts within the village, the water, sewer, and general fund, share of expenses. So, there are a number of details that need to be correct.
Yep. And some of the things like, we had talked about specific articles and how those allocations of funds, if they're not spent in the budget year, how they're recorded and then carried so that everybody understands where they are. So right now it's not as clear as it's going to be. So we worked through that process today. I mean, it was a productive, relatively involved, but very productive. We put together a work plan that I think will address all those concerns.
All right, then we would move on to the first item on the agenda, which is the contract approval, finally, for the PBA Local 410. I have here two contracts, the corrected one, and this one that we had in our packets are wrong.
Yeah, so please, if you do have the copy that came attached, that was version 2. What Deb has next to her is version 3, which came through
Late this afternoon.
from the attorney this afternoon. So those copies have been vetted with the appropriate,
I have 2 copies, I need to sign both.
yes.
So
So
we need a motion again for me to sign.
please,
I'll leave this one for you. This was
Got it. Yeah, that's why I tore mine in half. I don't want to make a mistake. Sign the wrong one. So would someone make a motion, please? For me to sign these 2 documents.
I'll make the motion to authorize the village president to sign the union contract with Local 410.
Need a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, now I'm going to sign it. There were 2. Scott gets both of them. I'm assuming one goes back to McArdle and one's.
an original that will record and make sure that you then get copies of recorded, finalized.
Okay.
1 and 2. Second item on the agenda is the unsafe buildings update. There were 6 or 7 items addresses that I sent to, or streets anyway, that I sent to Scott.
Yep.
That is not on the agenda. And I was the one who brought it up, and I want to just put it this way. This is not intended for us to spend any significant amounts of money. This is intended as a deterrent to get people to understand that properties that have been languishing, and some of them for many years, in falling into the ground should be worked on. So we don't get to 66 Atkinson Street position. What I would like is what we did with the Sauvé property, which Ray Wasuko will remember, which was 2012, 2013, something like that. And a letter was written and brought Mr. Sauvé to the table to talk to us about what his plans were to do reparations of things that were problematic. Everything was marked, photographs were taken, they went together. At that point, the attorney did the letter. However, I'd have to say, in order to save money, The letter's a template, and there isn't any reason why the properties that we deem appropriate would not receive a letter from us in order to start the conversation. That's what I'm asking. The unsafe building ordinance is intended to help people and move them along through the process, help them get structure. There is opportunities. I believe the revolving loan fund now has some opportunity to approve home reparations or renovations. Gary said something about it a while ago. So there's that plus SEPCA and the other areas, other organizations available. So I believe we should start that process.
Yeah, there's two specifically. I think Deb already mentioned 66, which will be part of your conversation on the 29th with the joint board. I just handed out some information, which is a little bit of background and some update on the property at 9 Barker. Again, we've had contact with the owner in a variety of different times and not gotten to the point, I think, where anybody's, seen progress. Again, this was a uninsured building that had a fire, so it always creates more difficulty to get to a resolution. But we can continue to work with them, and if you'd like us to start engaging them in a more formal process, we certainly can. I've got another 5 properties as well that we've been in touch with. Some of those that go back as much as 2013, some of these. So to Deb's point, yeah, these are long-term. And most of these, as you can well imagine now, are into negative positions with taxes and other liens and expenses on the properties. So the long-term outlook of trying to get it, there is not a lot of market incentive to do this work. So I think we can engage, we can try to bring people to the table, try to get people involved, see what we can get people to do, short of some of the more aggressive activity that we've taken in some of these properties where we've actually gone to court and gotten court orders on some of these. I think that's the one extreme, the most expensive, obviously, most time consuming. And then again, at the end of the process, if you have a bankrupt or a derelict or a non-compliant owner, how much is the village or any other entity willing to take title? And then at that point becomes your long-term process or problem. So that's a larger discussion. I don't anticipate we're going to get into some of these today, but we'll certainly start working on I think there was at least 7 on this sheet plus the other 2. So I think it was 9 total.
And again, for us to just imagine that the end result is always the same, that the village has to spend money on it, isn't necessarily true. Different outcomes for different people based upon the level of deterioration of the building, whether it was property was totally gutted or only partially so. I know there's been some movement on Mr. Kane's property, that some cleaning out is being done, so maybe there is a plan. But residents come and speak to us and ask us why we aren't doing something about a property that looks hideous or that they have to walk by every day or their kids have to go by.
Are some of the ones that are languishing with taxes due, is that something that with a tax sale,
Well,
we've got some of that?
We've got a preliminary list that I'm going to be giving to you in July with the idea that we'll have a conversation in August. And if we're going to go to tax sale, we would do it in September. And the reason I'm waiting till July is we might as well see, the next round of collection and see where we are.
Right,
So
yeah.
Right, seems that would clean up some of that perhaps.
it might.
And
I
then
mean,
think-
again, if people are, aggressive enough with this market, it might be a point where maybe somebody will take a distressed asset
Sure.
and put some money into it
Maybe.
because they think at some point it might be valuable.
A lot of them, I mean, the ones like, for instance, that maybe they're a negative return because, say, for instance, the Barker Street property and the lot is so small.
Mhm.
I'm not even sure if you can build on it now if you took it all down to the ground.
It'd be very difficult.
Because of the restrictions based
Right.
upon our zoning and all of that. And so it's particularly, say, that is negative and it goes to sale. You think anyone's going to buy it? I mean, that's my concern, is that the properties aren't sellable even if you go to auction, because because even the taxes are just too much.
Well, we'd be
pay.
better off not collecting some of that tax and just letting
Yeah.
it go back into some use.
If someone
and
can
get cleaned
do
up.
something with it.
Right.
But
no,
again, that's part of
exactly.
the unsafe building ordinance, to try and encourage and help that
Right.
move forward
And
without a lot of expense. If we
I
can
think
do it
the
without a
newer
lot of expense.
properties that have, either been affected due to fire or what have you, I mean, it's a tough time to get something built, just to get a contractor, number one.
Mhm.
And then to settle with insurance companies with the volatility of the market.
Mhm.
So I think moving forward to ask the manager, zoning, to communicate with the owners and find the disposition of what those properties are in a
Mhm.
friendly way rather than a templated legal.
Well, a letter
document.
isn't onerous. A letter is an investigation and,
Well, that's what I'm
and
saying,
asking
but-
them to speak to the
Right.
manager.
Right, not from a lawyer.
No, that's what I'm saying. So all I'm saying is that the letter that Attorney Masuko did for Sauvé is a template that can be used to provide, this is how the transaction went. This
That's
can be done from the municipal standpoint, and it's cost effective, and it doesn't wind up scaring the
Right,
homeowners.
I think it can be a friendly process where we ask how the town can help, so that we do avoid some of these,
Mhm.
66 Atkinson
And
Street. And
there may be some new
not bringing them
opportunities
to the
then.
table, but giving them an
Well,
opportunity.
and
to
that's kind of
respond.
what I want to work with Gary on, because there are
Mhm.
some new programs and some new money that's come into housing specifically. And some of these might be eligible for that. And again, it won't pay, enough maybe to incentivize a total renovation, but at least it's a step in the right direction. So,
Like BSHA, those, I don't know if they do any kind of renovation programs, but I know the housing stuff, I know that Monty Barnett is on board, at least he was a couple of years ago. So we have a local character that we could tap
right.
and to see what else is available for these people. And a lot of new federal money's coming in to help housing,
Right.
so.
It's a little tricky, as you well know, right? Any federal money that comes in has a nice thick binder of requirements.
It sure
and
does.
all sorts of compliance-related issues that come with it. There is no free money,
No,
but certainly it's worth us pursuing and trying. I think the approach to be a partner, and as opposed to being, hitting people with a stick
right,
at this
that's
point.
not the intention.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess we
Pro-
could
the,
have one.
the problem as I see it is that we've got these 9 properties, say, whatever it is.
It's roughly, yeah.
And we don't have an established strategy for each of these properties. And that requires somebody to take ownership of creating the plan. And, in some cases, an owner in a property like this might be amenable to do a deed in lieu of taxes. Now, granted, the issue of the town or village taking ownership of these properties is a problem,
Mhm.
but there's ways around that. You can set up companies or LLCs or whatever to do that. But I think but the question is, who on the manager's staff can do this work? Somebody has to do this work, or we're going to just languish with these things. And I think that there needs to be a plan. The plan needs to state what the position of the owner is, whether it's because that gets to the tax sale angle.
Mhm.
If somebody is refusing to pay taxes, refusing to do anything with the property, then it's our job to do something about
Mhm.
that. But clearly, it would be nice to have, Chuck Wise's area or Gary Fox's area or whatever, developing a plan for each of these properties so that, when we take it up again, we're not going from scratch.
Mhm.
Somebody approached me the other day and they wanted to know what was the story on 66 Atkinson Street. And I said, well, I'm not the one to give you a update on that, but I said there's been several engineering reviews of the property and it's in very tough shape. But again, we've got this owner who bought it for $1, has never put a dime into it. He's never paid $1 in taxes, I don't believe. He apparently won't hand over the deed. Our expenses on that property, in this most recent financial, we're up to almost $10,000 this year, which is just, we're in court, I think, with him.
I think we got a
So it's-
determination. Scott has that information.
But it's just,
I know,
It's a
I can tell
mess.
you just from that one property, it's a very labor-intensive process, and it really doesn't involve just one or two offices. We've also had the fire chief involved, we've had the police chief involved. I mean, it's a very
Oh, it
time-consuming
is,
process to get even small incremental steps completed. And it took a lot of people to get us to the point where even at a point where I think maybe we can make some decisions on one property. So I'm as frustrated with the process as you are, because it's
Well,
very
it's just-
slow.
I realize there's only a few people on the staff, and they've all got jobs that they're doing. But I think until, even if it could be spread out among a couple of the people, we could make some progress. At least we'd know some of the very basics. Are we dealing with an owner that's cooperating?
Right.
Is this something that can be settled? So anyway, but
Well, yes, but my thinking is we have to start somewhere. We have an ordinance for a reason, and the ordinance doesn't have to be, again, the ordinance doesn't have to come from an attorney. It can be a simple letter with a name and address of the owner in order to inquire and to get an understanding of where we are. Not all these properties have anyone in them, and they are not necessarily in estates, like there's at least a couple of them, where you wouldn't send a health officer because there isn't any reason to. Unoccupied buildings don't necessarily have a health issue if they're not externally exposing the citizens to things like asbestos and so on and so forth.
like this one.
Right, so there are some things that can be done by a town officer, such as the health officer, but other things that can be simply done with a letter and get a response and start the ball rolling and see what they need and see what we can offer them. Yes, it's time consuming, there are a number of them, but we need to tackle them at some point. We can't just put it off forever as they continue to deteriorate. Look what's happened with 66. In reality, we should have gone after that building while it was still owned by the YMCA. Instead, it got ticked off for $1, and here we are. We could have actually gotten something done then.
Right, well, and we all are, certainly, the longer time that these buildings go without occupancy or without anybody maintaining them, you and I both know that it's not going to be a good outcome, no matter how much energy we put into it, which is,
Exactly, and we don't want to be held liable at any point. We don't own the building yet.
right.
But if the building collapses while we're in the process of something, we don't want to cause that to happen. We want to make sure that we take care of it before there's an imminent collapse.
But even there, you could put a stake in the ground. You could say, all right, 66 Axon Street there's no hope for that. The resolution, the ultimate resolution of that property is a tear down. Okay. So then the strategy becomes, can we attract a neighbor to joint venture with us on the cost of getting this thing done? 9 Barker Street, it's got asbestos in the air and all this kind of stuff. Is there a possibility for rehabilitation, or is this toast? And if it's toast, what about the neighbors? Is there a neighbor around?
You might be interested in adding a lot to their side of their property.
Absolutely.
Because that happens.
And that has to be worked. But I mean, if you don't have a strategy, you're not going to pursue that stuff.
Did you guys have anything?
All right,
So,
we will work
where
on
are
the
we?
letter and a process,
That's-
and then
okay.
we will start to
And
give
even
you
if
at least an
it's
engaged update as
Like
we go
one every
through.
couple of months or whatever it is, taking the worst. and
Some of these
down the
owners are
list,
difficult
something.
to contact. Some
And I
are
understand that
fairly
too. Well,
responsive,
for instance, the one on Hapgood Street Extension.
very difficult.
We know, according to Ray Masuko, that he came out of bankruptcy. Okay, no bankruptcy. The guy is a casino owner. What's happening? Why is the property still sitting there like that? You know, basically getting rained in every time it rains, like today. And yes, although it has been boarded off, I still wouldn't say that that would make it safe enough to be concerned about kids not getting into it if they wanted to. And there has been neighbors who moved out of that street. Remember that, Stefan? The neighbors who lived across the street from that, and they moved out, they left our community because they didn't want to deal with that.
Well, I think the part of that was also though there was there was a more lucrative job opportunity up
That's
north.
possible
Yeah.
too. But they came here all the time telling us how much they wanted us to do something about the building. I remember that. Thank you, Scott.
Okay,
All right, we move on to the Class A biosolid operation update.
great. Let me, I'm going to grab Rob and see if he can come off of Zoom and just give us a little bit of an update. Hang on a second.
Page. Sorry about that.
So Rob, if you can hear me, you got to take your microphone off of mute.
Yeah. No, I can hear you.
It looks like you did that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. We've lost the
No, I
picture
can't hear
though. We
him.
can't see you, but we can hear you.
Hang on a second, Rob. You're talking to me, but I can't, we're not picking up your
Oh,
audio.
he's not muted. Huh.
You can't hear me now? No? How about now?
Not getting him.
What about now, Scott? Well, you always wanted me to shut up anyways.
Folks on.
Rob,
Zoom
it's a
can hear him,
problem
but
on their
I
end.
can't hear him out here.
It's okay. I talk too much anyways.
Their computer's all messed up apparently because we get no picture either, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the phone number is. That. Well, I mean, if is that operational or not? That phone? If it is, you could call it. Oh, he's calling Scott. Maybe.
Hey, bud.
Oh, there he is on the phone.
See if I can you hear me?
Put your mic on.
No,
Got my speaker on here.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
no, not picking up.
I'm not getting anything from him.
Oh, jeez.
Even on the phone, I'm not getting him.
You want to call my house?
Yeah, but I've got him on.
Yeah, maybe. We do have in our packets the report that came from RMI.
Let's see if I can get him here.
We were looking for some input.
How's that?
Hey,
Yeah.
guess what? We have you.
Okay, how's that?
Technology at its finest. At least I can put you next to the microphone and we can pick you up and I can get you off the phone. So sorry about that.
That's okay.
So we do have just the updated data from just our operations. But I think the board, Rob, wanted to hear a little bit more from you about the process, how things are progressing with, I guess, just the process of handling the material and any other sort of operational updates you might want to, give the board some insight into.
Okay. We can hear you guys, but we can't see you. So April and Sheila are here. I don't know if you can see them.
Yes, I can see him.
Okay, but you can't hear them. And I can relay anything that they can say if they want to say. But operational wise, we're running the dryer pretty much every day, 5 days a week. We shut it down early on Friday and clean it to do our weekly cleaning. Last week we had a weld that failed, and we were able to take it apart and get it to a local welder and have it fixed. And we're back up and running mid-morning of the next day. So that was fortunate that we were able to catch it at the end of the day, take it apart, and then get it to the welder, and he fixed it in the beginning in the morning. We put it back together. But everything else is, I mean, it's labor intense because right now we're going into the bags. And then at the end of the week, we get 6 to 7 bags a week, and then we have to dump them. So we're spending time with that. But I mean, the ultimate thing is we're not sending it to the landfill. So I mean that's the great thing about it. But if we ever move forward with it, that's something we definitely got to look into, is the labor part of dealing with the biosolids after they come out of the dryer. I know Scott and I, and we've talked about with Steve and Charlie is potentially getting something else, whether it's some sort of storage down there. And if it's down there, it has to be something that is out of the floodplain or floodway. So it has to be dry. But other than that, everything seems to be working fine. We're still working with a local electronics people to get the dryer and the press working together. I just emailed them today, and the guy's reaching out to the press company to try to coordinate what he needs to do to hook those two together. So hopefully that they can run together, because right now we have to keep an eye on it. We can see it on SCADA, which is a step like that happened like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So we can see it in the office on SCADA. So it kind of gives us an idea when we have to go out there and check things when the sludge is getting full in the dryer, so that we have to shut the press off to let the dryer catch up. And that happens about 3 times a day right now, the way we've got everything fine tuned. Next week, there's a representative from the company out west that's coming to hopefully fine tune the dryer to that we can optimize our output of sludge through it and tweak it where we can. We think we've got it set now pretty well. We haven't touched the settings for, I bet, a month. And just basically are just running it and getting anywhere between 3,400 gallons to 3,800 gallons through the dryer a day, which is good, I think, compared to what we started with. So that's about all I can add to it at this point.
So
What is this coordination thing?
We're trying to get the dryer talking to the press so they communicate with each other. So
What's the
that
prep? I mean, is that?
can you just sort of give the press? I guess Jigs just wanted to see just maybe a little bit of a discussion on how it works.
so the sludge press, we're pressing the sludge. It goes from a conveyor into the top of the dryer. All right. And the dryer can only take so much of the cake or the sludge that we press. So we have to monitor that and shut off the press. Otherwise, it just goes all over the floor. So if we can have the communications where the sensor comes on at the dryer and says, I'm full, it can automatically tell the press to shut off. Does that make sense?
In looking at this report, it looks like we're running at about, I don't know, 25% of capacity.
That's what I
So-
calculated, but I think it's, the capacity was per month versus per week. So I think we're at 9%.
Well, whatever. I mean, it looks to me like on page 3 of 7 of this report, that the wet tons are substantially less than the capacity. Obviously, we're only running it 7 hours a day versus what they would be running it at 22 hours a day. But if the dryer can't keep up with the sludge, I guess that's what it sounds like. The sludge is, at times, comes in too quickly. That would seem to be a pretty major issue.
So I guess, Rob, the question on coordination then is are we going to hit a limit to the point of volume to where we can only handle volume up to the drying capacity? And at that point, that's a limitation, or are we just still in a mode where we're tweaking and that we can reach these other numbers, that 140 wet tons per month, which is probably a max kind of number?
Yeah, I don't see where you're getting those numbers from, but
It's from, well, I'll tell you where it came from. That came from our our facilities management plan. Remember the one that we presented to the solid waste board? That was that was with the last month.
Okay.
So that was the attachment that went to them.
Okay, I don't have that in front of me, so,
Right.
but yes, the thing too is if this press and the dryer could talk to each other, that they could be running by themselves. We won't have to monitor them. They could be running when we're not there. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's where, but right now we have to be there because they're not talking to each other. So if, when it does get full, we have to stop the press. But if we can get that link together, we can actually have it run. And then right now it takes about 4 hours to fill a bag. So we can go an extra 4 hours to fill the bag per day. So we could actually get roughly 2.5 bags out a day. So we could get another bag out production wise. What that number is going to toll at the end of the month, that would be an April question.
Yeah. Rob, those were based on running 24 hours a day.
So
maximum.
April's telling me the numbers that you guys are seeing on the sheets are running 24 hours a day.
Okay.
5 days a week, April?
Right.
Yeah.
5 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Yep.
Okay.
Which would be obviously, you'd never want to max out to that level. So there's going to be some optimum level below that where everything coordinates, and still we have enough, we're keeping, it keeps up to the plant volume. I mean, I think all three of those things sort of have to come together.
Correct. And right now, with the way septic is coming in, we're maintaining our volumes and our digesters. Everything is well within range, what we're doing right now.
Okay.
But you're going to need something that can coordinate the flow of the sludge into that machine so that it doesn't back up.
Wasn't that the,
Is that doable? I mean, are they telling you, is RMI telling you, oh yes, that's very doable?
I'm calling it back. We lost our
my
signal.
recollection, wasn't that what she described as part of the issue with Brattleboro? Why
Why they stopped?
they stopped and.
Are you there?
Bigger?
Scott, you there?
They needed a bigger facility for one, and they're
Well, they
building
needed a
one now.
facility, period.
No, they need a bigger.
They didn't have a,
And you might be right.
they didn't
but
have a structure to
Yeah.
put it in.
I would have to say before her up back on the phone, I'm kind of underwhelmed that this situation wasn't already tackled. I mean, clearly,
Well,
they already had
yeah,
some
I
time with
thought so, too.
Brattleboro that
But
this should have
it's-
already been taken care of, so we wouldn't have to have
we ought to
someone
find
physically
out.
watching it.
Somebody had to talk with Brattleboro and find out what exactly. Right, but I'm just,
I called them, but all I got
I
was the
mean, I
manager.
trust but verify.
Yeah.
Okay,
The manager said they didn't have a problem, but they didn't,
know,
but it wasn't in depth, it wasn't.
there's been at least, I think it's twice.
But nobody can hear us.
Is there anyone there that can hear us on this end?
Especially on that Coventry landfill where they're not gonna take any of this anymore.
Oh, that is for real.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Now you can't get him again?
No, now I can't get the mobile to work.
Oh,
And the other question that I have is we have 4
Here we go.
employees, they work 6 to 2.
2:30.
It's like.
Hey.
it's like-
Hey, sorry about that. It dropped the call, so you're back.
Well, they have
Yep,
other
no,
stuff
that's fine. I'm listening, but
they have
Oh,
back
yeah,
there.
So-
what I'm saying is that
each
you-
system each plan and each system is different. They were talking about Brattleboro and why we haven't worked these out. We've been trying to work with vendors to get this going since December, January, to get these two tied together.
Now we've got, point of order, we got
Basically, only 2 people that do this.
Right.
And they've been working on it. 2 or 3 weeks ago, he was here, and then there was another guy that was supposed to do the press part of it, and he's now on a different project. So now the guy that was at our plant is now taking the reins back over to try to get us hooked back together with the dryer in the sludge. So there's not a lot of people that do this type of work. So that's what is where we're at.
Okay. Well, I think there's a couple things. Obviously, we're still in the process of getting our both approvals, right? New Hampshire and Vermont for our biosolid, our product. I think we're well on our way for that. I had some conversation back and forth with April today, and it appears that that is close to being ready.
Yeah,
And
she's
then-
shaking her head, so yes, that is.
Yes. So that was a point that the board was concerned with.
That's just Class A, right?
That's to get the Class A designation, which is the key.
Yep.
And then I guess the next milestone for us will be, once we get this press
And
process coordination, is where are we with production, so that by the time we get to September, the board has a sense of, are we at a point where they can make a decision about moving forward? So I think by September, we should have all of that information up to date.
yeah, I'm hoping so. But
I think
it's in the programmer's hands.
Yep.
the other question that came out in this report is, granted, we're dealing with lower volumes, but what are we going to do with this stuff? Okay, and if again, if Coventry's going to close, our options, become fewer and fewer. They said there's several options, but they don't list any of the options.
Right.
If it's not great, grade A, we can't give it away to farmers.
Yeah, but I mean, have we contacted all the local farms?
I
And
believe RMI said they were gonna do
Well,
that.
what right now is, if it's Class A and we're permitted in both state of Vermont and New Hampshire, we will have no problem getting rid of it. I got a farmer now wants it all.
What are you doing with it right now, Rob?
It's going into a roll-off dumpster and it's going back to RMI and they're dealing with it.
RMI is handling it at this point,
Yes.
because we
Yeah.
can't distribute it until it's Class A.
Until we get the approval of Class A. At that point, I think there's more people that want
yeah.
it. We have, right.
And we
Oh,
can
yeah,
get it.
I was
But
thinking we could
need
do a
to-
local
we need to know
distribution
that, because,
event too.
if they're talking about building a silo to store the
Oh, yeah.
stuff, I mean,
Yep.
that's not great. I mean, well, it just adds to the cost,
Yeah.
the cost structure.
Right.
If we have to store
If
it, yeah.
if the machine broke and you had to get it welded, that wasn't part of the analysis. That wasn't going to happen.
Right.
No contingency for that. So, we've got to
Well,
realistically look at what this thing costs, what it does, what it costs, and make the decision. But
Right.
I know you're talking about going to September, but at the same time, I was told after 6 months, we had to make a decision whether we were buying it or not. And we're there, aren't we?
we were going to get a financial analysis.
Well, don't forget, we didn't start right away. We had 9 months.
8 months.
And I think our actual implementation date, if I remember correctly, Rob, we started in November,
December 4th.
December 4th.
December 4th. I'm sorry. All right. I know it was end of November.
And
So it's
it's
December.
And it's 8 months according to Sheila.
So,
8 months according to Sheila?
Yes.
okay. So if
So we
we're
still
at a
got some
point
time.
in August where we don't have, we're not at 100% production, I think we're going to have to talk about what is that, I'm not sure the board's at a comfort level at that point to make an informed decision if we're not at full production.
And that's at Class A, because we don't want to incur the cost of building a storage facility. We'd prefer that it actually moves on to a local farmers, whoever wants to take it all, and save us that cost. That was the intention, was to get rid of all the hauling.
It
and
is
look at
Class
stuff with
A.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That ultimately, right, that taking that wet tonnage to a facility that's under pressure and potentially could close is really the ultimate avoidance.
No, we need something. We need something like this.
Yes.
No
Yes.
question.
Right, but we still we produce it every day. So we got to store it somehow. So because the farmer's not going to come after what little bit we make every day.
Right.
So the silo thing is if it comes off the dryer and it goes into the silo, we don't have to, and we can run it, 8 hours after we leave. It can just go into the silo, and then my thought was the farmer can come at any time and pick up what he wants when he wants. just like the septic haulers come in and dump.
How about if the farmer who wants it all puts the silo in, then we don't pay for that cost, they just come and get it.
No, I don't think that's gonna work.
We are talking about some options because there are some flood issues in that area.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so there is some money available to us to do some flood mitigation that relates to the plant. Because there are some things that Rob wants to do around the buildings anyway to make them more flood-proof.
Resist- yeah.
So this could fall within that, and we are just in the process now of trying to put those numbers together.
Okay.
So we can share that with you as well.
Okay, well, that would be good because that would help us mitigate the costs.
100%, yes. So, okay.
Okay, that sounds good.
Any
Does
other
anyone
questions?
want a tour?
Does anybody want to stop down and do a tour of the machine running?
It's not a, yeah, I don't
It's-
see why not, not this week.
I'd be interested.
Actually, if we could schedule it, Rob, I think,
Yeah,
yeah, we
do
could
that.
maybe just do an open invite and try to find a time where folks can come down. That would be helpful. We'll
One of
work
the-
on a date.
One of the things that Chuck suggested to me is when we were at Class A, because I guess we can't distribute it at this point, is to create a wastewater, a local event. And people can come down with a bucket or whatever and take some of it if it's possible. And so whether it's doable or not, because he said what he's used, what you've given him or whatever,
Right.
what had access to, has really made his vegetable and stuff like that take off. So
I
he's
don't think
very
you want to
happy
put that
about
in
it.
your vegetable garden yet.
No, I don't know.
It's
Maybe
supposed
it's
to go in your
flowers. I
hay
can't remember what he
fields
planted.
or, you know.
But something grew very, very well, very, very fast. So I don't know. It's on his property. It's up to him.
Well, all right. So, all right. So, Rob, we'll work on that and apologize to everyone for all the technical difficulties. So,
Do you want anybody
Anything
else?
He's gonna hear about this.
Sheila or April?
anything else for the folks tonight? So,
Thank you for all the hard work, Rob.
thanks,
really.
guys. We'll come back with some additional updates. I'm sure the board will have some more, but we'll definitely schedule an on-site, which would be helpful.
Okay,
Thank you, guys.
thank you. Yeah, bye.
Bye.
Well, that was
I'll tell you, but this is kind of like the
Wow.
unsafe buildings, is that there's so many.
Well, well,
Yeah, I mean, somebody's got to pull this stuff together.
Yes.
And,
I know we had the.
you know,
we had the nut
and we, you know,
problem.
when we saw the original numbers that RMI did, you know, you knew that we were underestimating the cost. I mean, it was clear that we were underestimating the cost, but anyway.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
there's more work to be done. Obviously, we're still not there
Yeah.
operationally. We're
But
still not there
operationally is-
financially, and we're still not, I don't think, at a
No.
point where I could present to you a recommendation that I would be comfortable.
well, I don't
supporting.
understand why the communication problem wasn't already taken care of before we got it. That the dryer talks to the press. So there was no, the whole point was to make it so
Well-
it could operate while we didn't have personnel there
The
to maximize
The
it.
difficulty is every plant has a different SCADA system. And so as we've been struggling with ours, as Jiggs had pointed out previously, we'd had all sorts of problems with overtime because of alarms and fine
Right.
screen alarms. And so we've been slowly knocking off problems. And now this is another addition to that system so that it can be run. And it's just different than, you know, it's not the same system that they have in Brattleboro.
Mm.
So we're making the best accommodation we can.
I thought we had talked about some upgrade down there in that system to make the accommodations though.
We have, and
We
that's
have.
why we have not had as many alarms and after
Yeah,
hours
it hasn't gone off all the
responses.
time. Yeah.
So we have made the modifications, it has improved, but this is now gonna be another modification that needs to happen. Because again, you're talking about production without monitoring, right? So you have to have some ability to have somebody made aware if we have a problem, or as Rob said, otherwise the thing just piles up,
Right.
which would be a bad way to start your day.
Oh, yeah. You want a big old backup when you come to the gate? No.
A room full of cake is not a good.
Not
it's
the
not a
kind you
good-
put a candle in either.
It's just not a good.
But you know, you look at the scope of this issue. I mean, we're just a pea hole in the snow. I mean, this is a huge issue confronting
Well,
the
the
United
hauling
States.
of wet sludge and the closing of landfills
Yeah.
is a huge,
Huge
huge
issue.
problem.
Yep.
So
That
I
I
would-
agree with you 100%.
I would think that the you know, study and analysis and research into perfecting this science
Right.
of drying this stuff would be getting a lot of play. You know, it just seems so obvious.
The
that-
long-term solution, you cannot think that is going to be to bury it, just to continue
No.
to stick it in landfills. It's just
But
got
where
to
was it-
be.
This person came from what? Europe? Was
This,
being used in Europe
This
before?
was
Yeah,
China.
China, yeah,
China.
exactly. So, I mean, you would think that you wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel, that they would have more information because they've been using it longer. So
True.
therefore, they've had more episodes of backup or whatever it is that they needed to take care of, and they figured out how to do it.
That's if they want to disclose it to you.
That's if they want to disclose the Chinese secrets. Yes, I get that. This is actually the funniest meeting I've been to in a while. I
Long
appreciate
time.
it. Yeah, in a long time.
Punchy.
Let me see.
Anyway,
So any other questions? Are we ready to move forward? So we'll be revisiting this.
yes.
Okay. Next on the agenda, video records retention policy.
Thank you. Dave, could you come up maybe and sit here so we can catch you on the microphone? So I wanted to bring the board up to speed, and I'm not asking you for any decisions tonight, but more as an informational conversation, because as we have gotten further into our Axon body camera project and our other required projects in terms of how are we going to manage all of this data and store it and archive it and be able to utilize it when it's necessary for active cases and other types of activities, we found that we also have a problem that's been brewing with the existing camera system in the building. So right now, we basically have 18 or 19 cameras, 19 cameras that photograph a variety of spaces in the building continuously. Most of the time, those cameras really produce nothing because there's a limited activity. But there are times if they're interviewing somebody in the interview room, or they're bringing somebody through the building, or there's some other, related activity where that data then has to be maintained. And amazingly, we have now piled up 10 terabytes of this video data. And the problem is it's gotten so significant that the server that it's on, which is only 6 years old, but is now basically obsolete and ready to crash. And there's no way that we can actually back up this material. And so we're concerned that ultimately we could lose what's on that server. And right now that server also functions as his primary network server, as well as all of his file data and all the other activities that he does. So we have overburdened this server now with 10 terabytes of mostly useless, but still some required data.
You can't compress the data, make it
It's
smaller?
the ACTI system, and again, we have a proprietary system. The initial cameras, the 16 of them were on this system called ACTI. We have 2 cameras, which are on another system called Ubiquity. And our newest vendor is Axon, which is going to be a 3rd system of video. So it's becoming a real challenge. The Axon stuff is backed up and goes to the cloud.
Cloud, yeah.
We're proposing and working on a proposal to take the existing server, which is becoming unstable and potentially going to crash with no ability to recover, and isolate that from his operation. So we would get a new file-based network and file data server. This new one then, the old server we would maintain, it would just stop as it is.
Right, at a certain date, and then you just
Dave would
can't
have to
10
then
terabytes.
be able to go back at some point, and part of the reason why I wanted to update you on the Vermont statutes and some of the things that we're going to have to do is some of that material we'll have to delete. The relevant data we can archive, and there are standards from the state that we can follow that I'll have to have you adopt. And so that's part of the records retention policy. As you can see, there's all sorts of criminal requirements, other requirements. It can become incredibly cumbersome. But, we're estimating that the vast majority, 90+% of that, is unnecessary, useless, just recording data of, routine, mundane, people walking down the street, cars driving past, squirrels, as Dave says, playing in the trees, that kind of thing. So
So the building data We're talking about 10 terabytes of all just building data?
Just the just those cameras.
Just what the building is observing
Correct.
through its camera system.
There are cameras in the interview rooms, in the processing rooms. That data we absolutely need to preserve, but there are cameras that watch the outside of the building. If, to make sure somebody isn't vandalizing the cars. If we've seized a car, we've had some go into vehicles. There are cameras in the fire department that are on our system as well that watch the fire trucks. They cover the entire building. So,
And is that, I'm sorry,
go ahead.
is that information tagged so it's easy to separate out?
Well, it's date. You can find it by date. You can go in and search it by date and time. But so if we have a case that happened today, you would know when it was. We keep a log of when we have somebody, say, in custody, and we can then go back and retrieve it from there.
So how many years of data do we have to?
Don't know how many years, but it's probably about the 6 years that the server has been
It's
in
at
there.
least that. Might
Oh,
be-
yeah.
So how long to pare 10 terabytes down to 2 or 1 terabytes?
Well, I don't think we're looking to pare this down. Dominion has suggested that we take the server that we have and isolate it.
Right.
Keep the data on there and not then have,
Don't keep adding to it.
don't keep adding
Right.
to it.
Just separate it.
But
Separate
separate
it,
it.
stop
Yeah.
it, say this is going to stay here,
Yep.
stabilize it so we don't lose it.
And then from going forward on that, there are a couple of options that we have as to different programs and systems to use to go forward with the data.
And those are cloud-based, so those become much less cost.
Than what your letter
Right.
stated.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw the cost of 1 terabyte.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what
It was
It's
outrageous.
$2,000 a
I'm
month
asking.
to store that.
Because that's what Dave and I originally thought, well, hell, we'll just send
22
it to the
grand a
cloud
year.
and we'll deal with it, somewhere down the road. And I got those numbers back and I was like, oh my God,
Just to store it.
just to store it. So, we're reaching a critical mass here. And the concern is, as we implement the Axon body camera system as well, we're adding more data
Oh, yeah.
flow requirements.
Mhm.
And so those will go directly to an evidence.com site, which is hosted in the cloud. But where it creates difficulty for us is during the data transmission phase, the servers are critically important to that portion of it. And that's when actually, quite frankly, we're the most vulnerable for things like hackers. Our system right now is unfortunately no longer supported software-wise. So if there's any new security updates or new patches, we can't get anything to make it less vulnerable. So I'm a little concerned about that with all of this cyber activity. So we've reached a point where we're having to probably invest more money than we want in a data solution that's going to be it's going to be in the long run, it's going to be beneficial because it'll archive the data more appropriately. And then once we adopt this new archiving policy, that squirrels in the parking lot data can be deleted after 14 or 30 days, depending upon how many days you want us to keep on that backup. And then the really important data, which relates to interrogations, people that have been detained, other potential criminal, whatever activity that is required based on the policy, would be then stored through that evidence.com process, which is a lot cheaper, ultimately, and more supportable. So that's where we've reached at this point. It's a frustrating process for Dave and I, because neither one of us are technology people. So we're sort of relying on best practices. We've talked to other departments. What are other people doing? Talking with the state. We've been working with a person at state archives and records to make sure that the recommendations that we make to you all meet the state requirements. Because in this environment, nobody wants to be accused of deleting records or erasing material or in some way, feeling like we're not following the law. So we've been very careful about researching and making sure that everything we're presenting to you is fully documented fully vetted and approved through all the appropriate agencies so that you feel confident that the solution will not put you at any kind of risk for any of those concerns.
Yeah, we're not trying to not be transparent. We want people to be
Right.
able to have the video and the records that we have that are necessary, but we don't need to save the squirrels playing in the parking lot or fire trucks sitting
Sitting
in
at
the
night,
bays.
right, watching the moonlight.
But can't we implement a policy right off that would basically say we keep that stuff for a week and
Well, I'm bringing
then
you
we
a new
delete it.
policy in July because we've been waiting on the state. They've been updating their policies because of these new body cameras,
Mhm.
and theirs aren't 100% ready to go yet. So we just finally said, well, we're running out of time, so we're going to take the best information we have, work with you guys in July to try to get it up to date, and then present to you some solutions so we can move this thing forward before we have a catastrophic failure on the server.
So
Are we gonna,
I'm sorry.
Are we going to need to purchase another server? at some
Sounds like
point?
it,
Oh, yeah.
like immediately.
Originally, they wanted to buy 2 servers, and we looked at other, we said, no, we're not going to spend that kind of money. So we looked at other models, came up with this hybrid model. We're probably in the neighborhood of $40,000 now to do
Really?
this. The original numbers were $70,000 to $80,000.
and none of this COVID money or other things are available for
Help this
this kind of,
process.
I mean, there's so much is of the public will, if you will, is transparency.
Right.
And the cost of transparency obviously is significant, and it would seem as though they would be able to
There
carve some money.
there may be some grant money coming down with some of the new bills that they are debating in Congress. Police Accountability Acts and such would, there is some money in some of the bills, but they don't have a bill that anybody is sure will pass at this
Right.
point in time. So to say that, yes, we can get grant money,
Mhm.
I can't tell you that.
Right. And I'm afraid to wait to go through an entire federal budget process, which we all know, who knows how that's going to be ultimately reconciled. October at the earliest, until you probably know something, and then I think we're concerned about the volatility of the existing server and our current exposure. So
And
All I can think of is, wouldn't it be a shame if somebody dumped a cup of coffee or something?
Oh, Jesus. Well, there goes that
God,
retention.
what a
10
shame.
terabytes.
We've just,
up in
we've
smoke.
just
Oh Lord.
lost
Now
all
we
these
outtake.
things and,
Oh goodness.
oh dear.
Oh dear.
Oh,
Yeah,
dear.
oh my.
I was going to say, because you're also protecting by videoing the fire department trucks as well, their area.
Right.
yes,
Now,
it is.
there's
that-
some other benefits to this, which are, because, Dave and I, after we picked ourselves off the floor a couple times and said, now, what the hell are we going to tell the board about this? Because, both of us were dumbfounded by some of these costs. This one platform that we're looking at currently would also then be able to add other cameras from other locations. So if we wanted to run a camera at the entrances of this building, it would be part of this new system and then could also then be
You
part
could
of this
expand that.
archiving. So we could expand it without, except for the cost of the camera. It's a very inexpensive way, and you can go up to 48 locations on this.
So maybe the
Okay.
select board would dip in and say, and.
So we
contribute.
should, it's like spread
So
the
I
pain.
think there's an opportunity to have that
Yeah.
conversation, because
Yeah.
we certainly can put stuff in this building, other locations where we've had vandalism and concerns and problems, right? There's all
Right.
sorts of opportunities.
Yep.
And that won't be actively monitored, so I don't want to give people the impression that I'm going to have a police officer sitting there watching 18
No,
to
it's
20
passively monitored.
monitors.
You go
It's
back
very
to it
passive.
You can go back.
Yeah.
if
Back
there's
and
an
right.
issue that-
So then you'd be able to put cameras here, and the storage would
Wastewater
be
plant.
paid by the town and
Water
the
plant,
village.
places that are really critical infrastructure to
Yep.
us that are concerned.
Yeah.
So that would be, to me, at least some benefit of sort of this bigger problem. But
Yeah,
be that as it may.
Certainly doesn't hurt, because I remember like.
And what's the capacity of a new one?
The
Um,
new,
A new
Server.
server?
Terabytes.
How many terabytes is
Well,
gonna hold?
you would store in the cloud.
Some
It
of
would
it's in
be-
the cloud, but not all of it, like the
the
building.
server
building
itself would,
video would not.
he told us today, and it was some outrageous amount.
Yeah, it was 40.
48 terabytes?
Yeah, 48 cameras, 48 terabytes.
Right.
Okay.
something like
So
that.
it's a 1 terabyte.
So I'm
per
not
camera,
even,
something like that.
so I'm not even sure how, 10 terabytes is hard for me to fathom. 48 terabytes, I can't comprehend
Yeah, I
what
can't
we would
comprehend.
But
possibly
does this
be.
new one filter out like the stuff that you say you don't need?
No,
Well,
it does not.
But
No,
with
it
your
does.
records retention policy, that's what you would do.
Okay.
You would have that window, probably 30 days. And
Yeah.
after that,
Yeah.
everything would automatically go
Yeah.
unless you have specifically picked off, dates or times
Right.
or segments to say.
It's not
But-
intelligent enough to say squirrel, delete.
But you're saying,
That's-
Well, it
that's-
actually can be, because he
Oh.
showed us something where like we were watching a car in a parking lot. And
Yeah.
he said, now I drew a circle around it and say, let me know when the car leaves. And 36 hours later or something, thing pops up and you see the car leave.
Oh,
And
So
they
is
can
it-
tell if it's a deer, if it's
Right.
a person,
Right.
and
that's
can
significant.
turn on.
So
But
there-
those are more expensive.
but that could change though, if, like you say, if the legislature is debating right now or forming whatever they're going to require, if those requirements supersede our policy.
My
No,
understanding is they've got the drafts, so we've already used what they've put together as a draft, but they have not given us a date as to when they're going to finalize these things.
Right.
And so, I think the way we would do it is we would take the language as is and say, to be modified if the state comes in and supersedes
Right, yeah.
any portion of this or creates a different set of requirements that were not in our current legislation. But I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
So,
But to follow up another question, the new server would be a lot smaller than the server we have now, as we understand it, because it wouldn't be holding the video.
correct.
It would just be the files.
It's a pass through, right?
Well, no, not so much
Isn't it?
that, but just the files for the office.
Okay.
The computers, the Word documents, the files there, it wouldn't contain the video.
And the one thing that it would be able to do that I was very concerned about is, so let's say we had a catastrophic failure, something happened and we lost a hard drive, we lost some portion of the system. That has a backup system already, it's like an automatic backup system. So you can restore almost up to that day pretty simply without going through major pain and suffering of trying to recreate data that's been corrupted or lost. So so that portion of it would give us some confidence. The other thing I'm really concerned about is the fact that we don't have the software support for this operating system. And the longer that operating system goes without security patches and upgrades and all these other, it's just a matter of time until somebody does something and we're not able, holds us a ransomware or, gets into our system.
Something's going to corrupt it.
Create chaos, which
Yeah.
is,
I've read an article that police departments are specifically getting targeted for ransomware attacks. There'll be an email, get in the system, because there is so much data that you can't let out that is
very
private.
confidential. So
Very
it becomes
confidential
very,
stuff.
right.
So they specifically target police departments knowing that they can't release that information and that I'm not sure if it's the Russians or who it is, but it's specifically across the country.
This would help to avoid that.
It would
new
lessen the possibility. I can't say that we'll never get hacked, and God, let's hope not. But at least if you're up to date, you have the most up-to-date patches and security enhancements, and that's really what we're missing right
There's
now.
no support for the current system.
Yeah,
Right, so that means we could get, if we
you're
don't.
more vulnerable.
Hope nobody heard that.
Right, the longer you
Get a
hold
new
on-
one quick.
Yeah, the longer you hold on to that legacy system, the more vulnerable you are to that problem.
Right.
We definitely need the cameras.
And we
Yeah.
talked about that. Can we do something different? Can we reduce this? Can we do something? And at this point, it's necessary to keep this information. We just have to make it more cost effective.
Right, and spreading it out through the departments and between town and village, if that's possible.
Two
is
things
a
that
way.
I think
Yeah.
of right off the bat were like, we had a vehicle that was secured or impounded. People came back. Then I thought the other one, which I thought was kind of, it was different, but good that somebody was paying attention in relation to the homicide on 103 of the truck that drove by, yeah. So, I think one thing that we probably ought to look at, we've discussed it, is that type of Sallyport type of.
Right, that's sort of in that longer
Capital
range
project,
plan for the
yeah.
public
Mhm.
safety building, and I think
Right.
we'll have to
Give us some better
work
security.
into
yeah.
that, because you'll definitely need, some other options with that.
Yeah.
But this is a more of a, I think, an immediate need.
Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
And I wanted to bring it to your attention because I know you haven't heard about this before, so this is probably coming out of the blue, like, without any preparation, without any background. So I wanted to make sure that if you have any other questions, Dave and I can try to get you answers, or, whatever else you think. This is sort of where we are at the moment with it, but we want to bring you a solution in July so that we can have a new policy, we can have a process in place for getting off this old system. And then ultimately, a platform where we can add on additional resources or additional locations and maybe find ways to share some of that cost as well. So,
Any other questions? Are we good?
Good.
Okay, we'll hear more in July. All right, next item on the agenda is the discussion of formation of a citizens group for police community relations. This was brought up by Alex Stradling some months ago. Nothing has moved forward. I had some conversations with Alex and some other people in the community, and there's some concerns about doing it themselves. So I don't know, what I'm saying is, I think it wasn't necessary. I think that Mary, somebody who came along with
Heard
Alex, had talked about it too, but people coming forward hasn't happened. And I'm speaking to Alex, he's not really in favor of running it now either, or even beginning it. So I would like to see if there is any taste for citizens to actually do something like this. I mean, my consideration is, we have reduced staff. I've heard more and more complaints. I'm not the only trustee who's heard them about non-responsiveness and lack of, performance by officers in the village. And I'm just going to say this out loud, that I think we need to do something to address it. None of these trustees can do anything about this. You're the manager, you're the chief, and people are complaining more and more about other things. I've been sending you emails pretty much right and left. I feel like a nag, but at the same time, I'm getting this stuff from other people. I've talked to you. I haven't talked that much to Jigs or Jeff about it. I don't know how much they get from community people, but I get a lot of it, and it's problematic, and we need to do something. And I'm thinking, even if it's a way for citizens to vent, if they would come forward to form a group, I think it would be beneficial. But that's what I have to say about it. And of course, you're here, Chief, so I'd like to hear you and what the manager have to say about it.
We have certainly tried to open up. Officer Buckley has communicated with people and has been on Fact TV. He has been to forums in neighborhoods to talk to people. We want to be responsive to the people, and we want to be responsive when somebody has a complaint. They can call me. They can call the PD and say, want to speak to me, and I will absolutely listen to them. Sometimes I can't solve their complaint or their problem, but I certainly will listen to them respectfully and take action where it's needed. If there is an issue and if the officers are not doing something right, that will be corrected. Like I say, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't.
Yeah.
But we certainly are open to it, and we're certainly open to talking to anybody. Officer Buckley has given out a stack of cards to everybody. He has listed his number on Fact TV. He's been on there a few times, and we're certainly not trying to not be open and responsive to people's complaints or problems that they have or that they see or they believe that are out there. We will look into it. We will work with them. And like I say,
I hate to be the bureaucrat, right? And there's a policy for everything, but in this case, there is, and I did attach in your packet our current complaint policy, which is fairly involved, but has
Wait,
been
where
in
is
place
that?
since 2013. It was under Bellows Falls Police Internal Affairs Citizen Complaints.
Yeah,
It was attached to,
I'm trying, it's all this police paperwork, I couldn't
I know.
find it.
It was
It's,
part of.
it was
part
at
of
the end of the video stuff. It was, so it had all the video recording stuff, and then there was,
Oh, I saw those.
Right.
Mobile video recorder.
right,
It's
so right
after
after
that.
that was the internal affairs citizen complaints current
Huh.
policy. Now, again, it's pretty involved.
I don't have it. I'm sorry, I don't have it.
This is what it looks like, Deb, if you have it in your paper.
Internal affairs.
Internal
in there.
affairs complaint.
Yeah.
It should be in with the video material.
It looks like the rest of it.
It's like
Yeah, it's
6
stuff right in
pages
there,
from the end.
sandwiched
Okay.
in there.
Yep. So, and my thought was, this was at least a conversation to say,
Yeah.
this has been, in place since 2013. It's pretty cumbersome, I'll be frank about that, but it also has been vetted and has been, run through various risk management and other types of processes. But a lot of communities have been looking at their process for citizen complaints and trying to make it less cumbersome, more open, looking at other ways of addressing some of these concerns. I would think if we wanted to start with a conversation, this would be a good place to start, because I think that it almost, when you read through this, it's almost because of how intense it is. I'm guessing most people are, by page 3, they're like, what the hell am I gonna do? I'm not gonna do this. Right,
But-
and if you get through all 6 pages, at that point,
Yeah.
you're like, okay.
But one thing I want to say is, don't worry about the cumbersome. Don't worry about if somebody has a complaint, we will take their complaint any way they want to give it to us.
Right.
They can come in, do a formal statement, do a report, speak to me. We can do that. If they want to do it anonymously, they can do that. We will take it any way they need to or want to present it to us.
That, of course, is if they feel okay about doing that. That's part of the reason why trustees get these complaints. For instance, we'll just go cover that one. This is the easiest and the lightest one that won't be as offensive, is the fact that 15 of our phone calls from last month were all outside of Bellows Falls. That's 5% of our calls. And we've had multiple complaints, and I guess worse now than before, of officers being outside the village. And people complain when they see that, and they also say that so-and-so didn't come when I called about such and such, whether the problem is no officers available because 2 officers are doing something else, or whatever it is.
Right.
The reality is, that's what citizens see. They see officers sitting in Westminster. They see officers sitting outside in Rockingham. They see officers in Walpole constantly. That's a big problem. We've witnessed it, as at least 2 of the trustees have seen that. Other people have said so. They continue to say so. That goes on and on. That's a minor, to me, could be a minor issue, but that's basically the microcosm and the macrocosm of what's going on here. And citizens don't want to come forward. They want to tell us, and they want us to do something about it. And we know the chain of command is, it goes to you.
Right.
So that's why you see so many emails from me, because I get a lot of that. And whether it's real or imaginary or some of both, it's a concern. And I want citizens to feel good about it. And I have a negative report about Officer Buckley, which I'm not going to say in front of the camera. I will talk to you separately. But I got that from a citizen who's had problems and problems and problems, and she asked a simple question. He took 2 weeks to get back to her, and it was totally irrelevant what she asked. So so those are some concerns, and that actually exacerbates the problem because they think they're not getting heard and they're not getting responded to, and it just is worse. And a lot of people don't want to talk about it. That's why they talk to us. I'm bringing it up because I think we need to deal with it. We pay a lot of money. We just signed a new contract. We need some performance that makes sense and satisfies our citizens.
Basically, if we're going to be sitting someplace, I understand there may be reasons for it.
Right.
But, for example, I had a citizen complain to me, well, actually several at a local establishment. It was actually quite embarrassing because someone would think that, hey, you're covering for somebody. So I actually went down and double checked. There was a car sitting in Westminster. I was hoping it was a sheriff's car. It was our car. And that was probably a half an hour, 40 minutes after
You already
I was
talked to
initially
some
made it aware of it, yeah.
Was that part of the parade on, or the track team coming? Because we had,
No, I don't think it was.
Well,
after
yeah.
that.
I'd have to check my log to give you a
Right.
specific
Yeah,
time.
Give me a specific time.
Right.
Okay.
Anytime that you have
Yeah.
something like that, give me a specific date and time and.
But it,
I'll certainly
I
look
happened to
into
be
that.
at an establishment where I was going to pick up something and then end up leaving there to go verify and hope that it was somebody else. And
Right.
let me tell you,
So that's why I put this on the agenda. If anyone in the public wants to do something like that, if I don't want a person sitting in the room alone, I come forward. And I guess I'm looking at the TV and there's no point in that because it's right over there. But if someone really wants to do that and they feel a burning desire to do that, please let me know. And we'll consider it and work trying to build something, because I think the citizens need to have a way to bring those concerns. And they aren't calling, or they're feeling not secure about calling the police, not to mention, of course, because we only have one dispatcher, they get Wyndham County sheriffs after 4:30, and on days when the dispatcher isn't available. So they feel it's even less responsive. And we know that there was reason all of that process. I can talk them through that piece, but when they make the calls and no one ever shows, and I'm talking like next day and so on and so forth, and it doesn't get responded, they feel very upset. Anything else that happens, they also spread that around to everybody else too. So, okay, I think we've
Well,
talked this out.
I
Yeah?
just want to weigh in. I mean, I don't get any of these complaints, and I think that part of being in a village like this with a police department is that we have a system, and we have to follow the system. We've reached out to the community. We've offered to have a review committee. The police department has willingly agreed to participate in that. Okay, and yet all of these complainers are apparently using this excuse, we don't want to talk to the police. Well, I mean, if you want the system to change, you have to work within the system. And so I think it's a great idea to have this committee, but people that are not satisfied with the current situation need to stand up and come forward, and we'll set up a procedure. The trustees will have some involvement with it. And we'll work out ways to facilitate communication. I think obviously one of the hot rocks for a couple of our trustees is police cruisers being out of the village. Okay. And I agree. I mean, I'd rather have them in the village, but I also know that there's probably good and valid reasons for having them out of the village at some times. But I think, clearly that's a situation where talking directly to the chief, whether it's you or what any one of us that it gets contacted to talk about. But I think this is really a situation where when you say, well, I get all these complaints, but nobody wants to involve themselves in it. Nobody wants to talk to the police to try to get it to change. That's just not a good reason. This is not good feedback to the chief, particularly when he's stepped out. He said, call me, don't call the dispatcher, call me with the issue. You don't even have to tell you who you are. I mean, for God's sakes, let's get real here, and let's ask the public who's concerned about this to please help us with this.
So you don't think that we actually say, so have you called the police department? Because we do. I mean, I know
Well,
I
if
do.
they
I can
don't
vouch for
do it,
myself.
but Deb, if they don't do it,
I know.
it's a lost cause.
And I'm not hearing from the same people every time. And I
Right.
send emails off to the chief, and I send emails off to the manager.
I just want to be fair.
Yep,
I want
I
to be
get
fair
it.
about this, and
Some
I
people
certainly want
are afraid of making these reports. They're concerned about other things, real or imagined. I don't know. But in either
Mhm.
case, that's why we're elected officials. They're going to keep sending this stuff to us. They think we can take care of it.
Yeah.
And we have a process too.
Well, let me try and persuade your fears there that there is no reason that they can't call the police department, speak to me, speak to any, about any issue that they have, and they certainly can do that. I get calls. I look into issues when I do get the calls. So there should be nobody should be worried about calling, speaking to me. And like I say, if you don't want to give your name, you don't have to. If you want to write me an anonymous email, you can do that. We'll take it however they want to do it, and we'll look into it.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Anything else? Or we moving on?
I believe we can move on.
We can move on. Okay. Next one is discuss the handicap parking options for Green Street. This came back from, this was actually proposed by the ordinance committee, the village ordinance committee, and we proposed this to the town because they do the marking. They have the highway department. We don't control any of that. And as I understand, Peter Gola kicked it back to us. Well, if you have that in your package, you have a chance to read it. The opportunity was to try and slow the traffic crowding, basically congestion at the north end of Green Street, right next to Dairy Joy. Because they get parking on both sides of the street, and sometimes not just on the sides of the street, but sometimes in the middle of the street. And that, when they're Friday, Saturday, those are probably the heaviest days for them. And we wanted to find a way to make it safer. People entering from the north can have a problem there. As a matter of fact, not being able to get down the street at all, and that has occurred. So that was the reason for the proposal.
We do get a number of complaints on that, and we respond when we do.
I mean, there is a sign there that says no parking from such and such to the end, but it's there. But the reality is, it's not in the ordinances, so it's not actually something that police department would have to enforce.
There is a certain distance, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, from Rockingham Street. Both sides, yes, that you can park both sides.
Yeah.
And then it starts a no parking side on the western side of Green Street.
So it's not handicap parking?
No, it's
no parking?
the proposal is to stripe off one or two.
Oh.
We did this with Scott, and we suggested that we would do it as a letter, and he submitted it to the select board, and they kicked it back to us. Stripe off as handicap the two spaces in front of, is that Boccaccio's? Is that that area right there?
Yeah, across the street.
To reduce the amount of cars parked on both sides of the street and causing congestion. That was the proposal. I'm not sure why Peter said we should do it, because we should have it back, because we don't.
You don't want people
And I'm
parking.
looking at Scott, but he's busy because something happened.
Well, they can park by ordinance now. They
Right
can
now.
park both sides.
Okay, yeah.
At the end, it's just.
But if you made a handicap person could park there.
Yeah.
Right, but that would be
Nobody
less
else.
routine. And the whole point is the amount of congestion. They park on both sides of the street. They fill all the parking spots on the back side, on the Green Street side of Dairy Joy.
Yeah.
They fill all the front sides. It's quite congested, and then they fill up the street. So at least a few weeks ago, they had it so there were so many cars that you couldn't go down the street if you were just traveling down there. And that went reported to the police, and they take care of it. But it is a continual problem with Dairy Joy. I don't want to make them lose business.
Yeah.
And they've come to an ordinance committee meeting last year, year before, when we were working on the streets and sidewalks on this piece. Because of the park, they don't want us to reduce it at all. So even if
I know that they have mentioned that people, say with boats or with trailers, sometimes come down and park on the western side of Green Street, that it's easy instead of trying to back around it. I know that was a concern that they had.
I mean, it's a corner. They're on a corner lot, so it does make congestion. So why exactly did Peter kick it back to the village when they do the painting?
I think it was more a question of, I think they were just not in the point of making the decision. So yes, they have to paint it. It's just a question of, we adopt an ordinance and make handicap spaces, we'll paint it.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, we can't make the change without completing the ordinance, which means going through the trustees and then going to the hearing, the whole public process. So it's probably going to be sometime in 2022 So I just wanted to make sure that the village was aware of it.
Right.
By having it on our agenda, and to weigh in as well, because it will be coming back to you when we complete a number of the ordinances. We're gonna bring them all back together, because a lot of them never got to the attorney for review and so on and so forth. Right.
It would appear this is a seasonal issue.
Definitely hot summer
Spring,
days
summer,
more so than.
mostly summer.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's almost like between the hours of X and X, it's a no parking zone or something like that. I don't know. It would seem as though to mark them, 365 days
It's
to have
handicapped.
handicap markings when it's a hot summer day issue, just seems like it's overkill.
And I think it's post-COVID and they are operating probably as much as a restaurant
Mhm.
now as a
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they've had a boom in
ice cream
business
place,
since
so
they
they've,
opened.
they've been busier, and I think is typical.
Mhm.
So whether
And the
that's
handicapped
sustained-
idea, just quite frankly, is it's a deterrent. If we do enforcement, obviously that's a pretty significant ticket.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
Somebody think twice about.
But, my thoughts are, again, maybe seasonal, but you want to be able to work with a business and help a business.
Yeah.
But and again, I don't want to seem as pushing it off to the police department, but I think it's a police department issue. If there's people down there that are parked inappropriately, go down and ask them to move. I think if you do that initially, word circulates, people get the message, and they don't do it anymore.
Well, we're
I
not
mean-
just talking about locals here. We're talking about people come out of state, cross the river just to go to Dairy Joy.
Well, I mean, they follow, they know what's going on. I mean, let's not play stupid. because,
No.
I mean, I'm saying that they know the rules.
Right,
They,
but-
they can,
Business owners don't control traffic. That's a totally separate issue.
no, but I want to be able to support business. But I mean, if you got someone who's parked out in the middle of the street, that's totally inappropriate.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we do
Right.
that. We,
Right.
if they're within 6 feet of the driveway, we issue them a
Right.
ticket. If they're parked past the no parking sign, I can't give you the exact feet, but there is a parking sign just about.
And I don't want to slam you, but I know I'll get a call after this. And that's why I'll say that. I have an individual that does contact me. Again, I suggest contact through appropriate chains. But being in this position, you can go out, think you're going to the store for 5 minutes to grab a gallon of milk, and you come back 2 hours later. Say they make parking complaints, and the officer does nothing.
I know who you're talking about, I believe. I've talked to him as well, and we have issued tickets for vehicles that they have reported in. I've done it myself, so I know.
Okay, well, I know that's good to hear. But like I say, I think designating handicap parking spaces or changing it at this time is a little extreme, because you want to work with a business, regardless of COVID. I understand there's people out there. In fact, that's where I was the other night when I got my complaint trying to get an ice cream. I never made it that completion. But if somebody's not parked appropriately, hopefully they'll swiffen up and the message will circulate, and they'll do it the right way next time.
Well, there's one particular person on the ordinance committee who's going to jump up and down when I give her the feedback next week about what we said here. So I will probably
Is this
look at you,
person-
Chief Bemis, and if you might show up to a meeting,
Try
you
and
talk
show
to that
up.
person. To see, because, sometimes ordinance changes are about one particular thing. I know the reason why we started the entire ordinance issue was because of J&H using the bump out like it was their own space, which they still continue to do. Sandwich signs on the sidewalks because they're not made so that we can have 4 feet of passage for everyone. Those were the reasons why we started the ordinance committee again after some years of, it had started in 2011, 2012, it dropped it, came back up again. Now we've been at it for 3 years. 3 years I've been on the
Right.
committee.
But what I'm trying to do is, I would encourage an approach before we have to take any governmental or judicial action.
Yeah.
If they're parked in the street, I mean, I've seen it when I've been through there. Sooner or later, these people, if they're the repeat offender, they'll either get a ticket for being parked in the street, or they'll be embarrassed that, hey, didn't we speak to you like 2-3 times before this?
Mhm.
I'm gonna work with the
I know.
business too, and that's The Dairy Joy is one of the items or the iconic features of this community, especially during the summer, that people come to visit from all over, not just this town.
Well, this is gonna be sometime down the road, and that might totally change, and before it comes back to the trustees.
Yeah.
Just heads up, or whether that's gonna be part of the future or not.
The Dairy Joy designates the start of summer.
Yeah. It's so crowded. I haven't been there once. Not once. Okay, moving on to the next item. We're on the 2020 audit management letter. And before we look at that,
Thank you, Dave.
thank you, Steve. Where is the management's response, right?
The management letter was not encouraging. You know, I thought.
Had some targeted concerns, and if you look over time, some of these concerns have been repeated, and so part of our conversation today was trying to eliminate this so that they're not repeated for our next audit cycle. So all of these are fixable. There's nothing in here that I would say is not a fixable problem. It's just a question of best practice, and in some cases, just making sure that we're performing our responsibilities in a timely basis.
A timely basis, yeah.
So
That's right.
I think the management letter, and we did talk to them before they issued it, I thought was fair. It was not, anything that I did not think was out of line. And so there are items on there that we have to address and plan to accordingly, as we've already started talking about.
Now, do you plan to does the finance department plan to provide a written response to the letter, or is that not done?
Typically, that's not done. They
typically
give
it's-
you a chance to have a conversation prior to it being issued. And so I had reviewed it. We had that conversation. I didn't have any particular items that I thought were unfair or unnecessary.
Well, typically, at least every year that I've been in the village, the audit report always includes the auditor's letter. And if there's an issue, when we've had a year at least one in the last 10 or so, we had an issue, there has been a management response to the letter to sort of ameliorate the letter from the auditor. This year, the letter was not included in the audit. And again, this is an area that would also impact the town. I'm sure their management letter, something like that.
Theirs was later issued than even this one was in relationship to the completion of the audit.
I'll be glad if next year this doesn't look like this, and I'm assuming it won't.
No.
Because I don't feel transparent when it isn't included with the rest of the audit, like it usually is. That's the first place I go when I get the audit book. I go, okay, right, letter. See how things are going. Gentlemen, do you have any comments about the audit letter? Nothing? Jacob, do you have anything else?
No.
Okay. Moving on, we get to the financials. And there they are. Questions? Or do you have anything to say about the financials before we?
Did you print out copies of them, or?
I have I have copies if you want.
I'd take a copy.
I printed mine out, and then I said, it looks just like it did the last time.
But there's not
There's
much change.
not much
There's
movement,
still-
yeah.
There's still, the same issues are
Or still have to be addressed.
there.
Yes.
So there's no sense in beating it.
A
as
dead
far as I'm
horse.
The
concerned.
only thing is, like I said, we do have a work plan, so there are a host of items that we've already covered.
That's encouraging. It
Yep,
really is.
that's important.
And
Yeah.
I will make sure I update you as we make progress so that you're in the loop.
Gentlemen, do you have any other comments on the financials? Well, that's the quickest financials we've ever been through. All right, on to the reviewing agenda items for the next meeting, July 6th.
13th.
Oh, it's so that's wrong. Yeah, that's
The
wrong.
The second Tuesday.
It's the second Tuesday in July.
Is the 13th.
13th.
We did the second Tuesday.
Yeah, the
select
first
board
Tuesday
is
was
the-
select board, and now they're on to Wednesday.
Right.
Oh, they're on, they do
They're doing
Wednesdays.
Wednesday,
I
which
did.
Okay.
I
always
put
throws
the
me
wrong-
off.
It is the 13th. My bad.
So it's July
Yeah,
13th.
I'll
Okay.
correct that.
Okay,
Yeah, so don't rush back from your holiday.
yeah, I've got so many notes in here, I can't remember what goes on next month. I'll have to look at it. If anybody has anything, let me know.
Obviously, financials.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, will be.
Yep.
We
updated,
again, because
you
we're
know.
only meeting once a month.
Yep.
And of course, we can meet sooner if we needed to. If we hadn't gotten the local 410 corrected today, we probably would have had to call a special meeting to get
Right.
that signed.
We will also have the updated policies that we discussed
Yep.
tonight for the police for the data,
Mhm.
as well as a proposal to talk about our servers. So,
Okay. Probably not going to have a response on the dryer next month. You might have a small update, the
I might have an
manager's
update.
report. Yeah.
Yeah, I will have an update. I will not have a comprehensive. It'll be August that we'll have a more
Okay.
comprehensive.
That's fine. You might have more information on the citizens group for the police community relations if someone comes forward.
Somebody comes
We
forward.
will
yeah.
see.
Okay.
Let's see. All right. If nothing else at the moment, we'll move on to the joint board agenda, which isn't it the 30th?
29th.
Is
I
it
thought it was the
actually the
29th. That's
29th?
a Tuesday.
Okay.
Because I double checked that one.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
I kept thinking the 30th, so I would have been late.
So the main thing that, just from this board's perspective, if there's any other updates to the automated vehicle conversation, because that will be on for consideration.
Yep.
That's one item. We will have a update on, well, we'll have a conversation at least about where we stand. If we're going to go forward for a tax sale, we'll at least have those updated information. We'll start to share with both boards.
Great River Hydro, is that going to be on there?
We'll have some Great River Hydro. I don't know how much of dating that's going to have on it necessarily, but we'll have something on that.
And the conversation about closing Harold's Cove,
Yes,
that's one of the things.
that's another thing that'll be on there as well.
I know there's a few more things, can't think of them.
There is. I have them upstairs, so I'll
bridge.
send a draft around.
The bridge, yeah.
Right. We're close on a bridge decision.
Yep.
And then that'll have an impact on 2023.
4,
Well, more in 2023, because they'll
Okay.
finish design and bid in 21 and 22.
right, okay.
Real construction, where it'll start to impact people, will be more likely
Yeah,
23.
just in time for conversation about the Bridge Street Bridge. That's coming up next. So I think it's
Yeah.
been like 6 years. So
It's, yeah,
since their 10-year forecast, yeah.
it's, yeah.
We did have orders, bills, and warrants, so I need a motion to approve the orders, bills, and warrants.
Move that we approve the orders, bills, and warrants.
All right, I need a second.
Seconded.
All right, and seconded. Any further discussion on those? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good, fast. Other business, Scott,
No, nothing.
Jigs.
Sorry, Scott, but the, as
That was
many,
quite a laugh.
just, if you get the list,
Yes.
the grass is growing in Bellows Falls, and unfortunately, on many properties, it's not being cut.
The cemetery we're back to?
No, not the cemetery.
Okay.
I'm talking about
Talking about residential.
residents,
Oh.
residences.
My bad.
Mhm.
Okay.
In fact, I get to look across the street
Oh, Jesus.
on School Street, and I see a property that recently sold for a fairly significant amount of money. And the new buyers are doing all kinds of work in there, I think, but they're not cutting the grass. So
Okay.
somehow we've got to get word out to people
Oh.
that there is a requirement
And
to
we,
do
yeah, we have
this.
an ordinance.
Yeah.
The grass ordinance, and if it gets over 12 inches,
Oh, man,
the process.
bring the goats.
Yeah, bring the
Bring
goats. The process is that the chief of police, that's the way the ordinance is written, the chief of police sends a letter out to the owners to ask them to do it. If they don't do it, then the police chief goes and gets someone from
Hire
the
somebody?
jail. No, they use
Oh.
those guys for $100. It used to be $100 a day for whatever it is, no matter how many people they had to bring. And they cut the grass, and then they send you the bill, or it winds up being a lien on your property. Just putting it out there, because if your grass is over 12 inches, I recommend you get it cut before you get that letter.
So I think
Thanks, Jigs.
the ordinance ought to kick in.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So is it 12 inches? Have you gone out and measured?
Oh, man, it's way beyond
It's
12
way
inches.
past that.
Oh, wow.
I
We're
told you,
talking
funniest
close to
meeting ever.
knee deep.
Like the goat idea.
Like the goat, no, it's a great idea. I think people thought it was insane when Andy Bernardo mentioned it to clean up the poison
Yeah,
ivy and stuff, but
actually
it's an
pretty good.
awesome idea.
That's right, they'll eat it all.
Right after that, I think a month or so later, a school up north used it to clear a bunch of, like another acre or so of land so they could have more playground. It's like, it never impacts them. They don't have a problem and they don't file insurance claims because they got poison ivy. So I think it's a great idea to use goats. I don't see any reason why not. And usually you can get a local farmer to bring them over and do some feed, right? So, I guess I don't really have anything except that it's damn hot. And
It's
I wish,
pouring rain at the
I know,
moment.
but it's like a hot bath out there.
Is it? Oh, boy.
Well, it is bath night Tuesday.
Get your, oh, get your,
Oh, is that when you take yours?
yeah,
Okay.
well, you can bring your goats out and get them
I
bathed,
know,
too.
get them bathed
What the hell?
too. Oh, so that's it for me, folks. Stefan,
No, we're good for tonight.
Jeff. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the heat. It's getting to us. That's what it is. All right. No need for an executive session this evening. Need a motion to adjourn.
I so move. Second.
Okay. It has been apparently moved. That's cows, not goats. Okay. Please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. We are out of here. Thank you, folks. Have a great evening. Enjoy the rest of your week. It's supposed to cool off.